Book 1 Section 15. Gore opines on the miracle that is modern aviation. Gore, Glasgow Airport was a first for me. Though as every traveller knows, there are no firsts in the airport's game. Whether it is intended to provide some calming effect on the traveller, or one bloke owns all the airports in the world and only wanted to hire one designer after getting a job lot on some paint, is unclear, but airline travel has to be one of the most depressing experiences on this planet of ours. I shall take you, step by step, through the points that make up my theory, so you will see that I am without equivocation when I make this claim. Whilst most academics may be unlikely to corroborate my essay writing abilities, I consider myself a keen observer on life, and, despite the long-held belief that keeping one's trap shut for long periods of time, a practice some could entertain more often, has a negative correlative relevance on one's oratory skills, this theory will also be blown out of the Highland spring water. Often my reflection is mistaken for indifference or incomprehension, though I let this enigma continue for the looks on their faces when an effortless line of vintage gore is added to the lexical stockpile of our adventures. So, relax and enjoy my pleonasm, without wishing to sound pretentious, of course. We find ourselves in the commencement of the airport experience. One cannot consider the purchasing of tickets part of the airport experience per se, though it is another area which generally fills one with disgust and contempt. Even with the added delight of online purchasing, we cannot suggest that our experiences have become any more of a delectation for the buyer. However, for the purposes of time, we shall limit ourselves to the ennui felt from the outward port to that of our destination. We are approaching the access road to the airport. This means that your airport experience is about to begin. This means you can commence a pointless collection of missed turnings, poorly assimilated road signs, and the first of many piquant comments from, and to, your travelling companion. Should you be travelling alone, you will now be converted into a horrific manifestation of the worst person you could ever be, as for the fourth time you pass Terminal 3 and try not to kill someone as the only airline you can find is at for Sri Lanka. Eventually, you find where you are going and are invited to pay a sum, often in excess of the airfare paid, to leave your car in the long-stay car park. That is when you realize that the train would have been a better idea, good God, maybe even the coach. It is at this point that one concurs that the airport is the most expensive place in the world. Prices have been unarbitrarily invented, plucked from a great celestial catalogue and added to products that are begrudgingly shifted for half the price in the city. Who decided £1.05 for a bottle of lilt? Even in the newsagent with the mind only placed in their continued emoluments would blush at the thought of asking you for 80 coins. Everything that will happen to you at the airport will have a negative effect on your budget, but you will pay, you will go back, and every time they ask you will pay prices that are, at best, obscene. Required to be at the airport 2 hours before departure. Who decided that? Why 2 hours? Why? So that they can have you in their delightful zones, where only items purchased at the airport may be consumed. Try to give your diabetic child a Milky Way you brought from home as their blood sugar levels drop to precariously low registers, and they will gladly allow your child to die at departures should you not be prepared to pay 90p for the same bar that cost you 20. 2 hours is far too much time to anticipate anything. It leaves you with a feeling of never starting your well-earned break, as airport time, it can be scientifically proven, operates at 64% the pace of time in the city. At night this goes down to 48%. Not only are you forced to purchase the products of the airport, but they even have the audacity to attempt to convince you of the immense favour that they are doing for you. In the same way that motorway service stations are awash with posters offering you the bargain of a lifetime in the form of a breakfast for 8 sheets, airports do the same with hideous slogans such as "Start the day the right way with our café and croissant," and others of the same odious ilk. Constantly reiterating the value for money, they are doing themselves out of a healthy salary to provide you with, as you acquiesce in doltish manner, to pay £3 for a muffin. Their supercilious nature is displayed for all to see, yet you never see an empty bar, cafeteria, or what is laughingly called a restaurant. Their detestable products raking in more of our hard-earned coins than the GDP of an African nation. Of course, none of this joy can be undertaken before the experience of checking in is completed. Another miserable facet of the journey that occupies far too much time. The only advantage of going somewhere ugly is that there will be less people on your flight and you will take less time to check in. Still, they will probably give you a 1970s Lego plane which will direct itself to the first mountain it can find and scatter your remains over an area of 70 miles. Checking in is also an invitation to stupid questions, and there are many stupid people in airports to ask them. It does not require much common sense to find a numbered desk and pass your suitcases to person employed to weigh them and ask you if you packed them yourself. How many terrorists have been caught by that one? They would have got on the plane and carried out their deadly deed had they not been asked that question. Surely, when they are trained in the Afghan mountains, they do a role play where they are asked this question, and lie. Anyway, there you are, standing in a line that has a monitor at the end which indicates the airline and destination. Sometimes, for a laugh, they put the time it is supposed to leave at, and some fool comes up to you and asks you something like, "Is it here for Magaluf?" They can see you, so why can't they see the screen? Surely, they can read, or have the decency to learn one word before leaving home. Is illiteracy so commonplace in our world? You just nod and say it is, when inside you want to tell them that this is the queue for Vladivostok by biplane, and that their queue begins at the end of the nearest sewer. Still, we must be polite. When finally checked in, we pass through passport control, carefully removing our mobile telephones, wallets, keys, belts, fingernails, pancreas, memories of our grandparents, and DNA structure lest it sets off the machine. Then, into the real airport zone. Into areas of what represents anti-shopping. Does anyone buy a DVD player before a getaway weekend in Rome just to save £7? Are there tourists walking round with power drills and special editions of Monopoly as they enter the pyramids? Too tempted by the bargain to say no. So, you do what everybody does, has a free squirt of some aftershave you end up not liking and work out how much cheaper the bottle of brandy would be in Asda and then leave it. The only advantage would be the purchasing of tabs, though as every country in the world vends these at approximately a quarter of the UK asking price, this is a rather pointless activity. Get over the horror of not finding Regal Kings when you get to Crete by smoking and smoking cheap. Spare a thought now for our friends making a stop over here in our airport. Try London for example. You choose the airport, but maybe not Stansted because it's virtually Sheffield. A passenger comes in from a European connecting flight and has an hour and a bit before a connecting flight to Edinburgh. They are forced into the transit zone which boasts one broken toilet, yet a sparkingly maintained overpriced coffee house pretending to offer Italian cafe to passengers from Milan. Do they not think they will see through this? If you had a party of Jennifer's clients over, would you take them to Bella Pasta in Darlington? I think not. Anyway, our European cousins would like a coffee, they would like a nice coffee too, but they are in the land of tea now, traitors, and make their way to the licensed thievery joint to place their order. Question 1 is, can you pay with euros? The answer is yes, though should be yes, but still, that is left for later. Selections are made and the waitress tells you that the minimum order for euros is 10 of those European pound things. She will give you change to the value of the rest, but at an exchange rate that would make Amnesty International call for an embargo on Gatwick. But then come the trick questions, just to make the foreigner feel like all those Brusselian currency units spent on English classes and courses has been a waste of time. Do you want a porcelain cup or a plastic cup? The customers, obviously expecting the Royal Doulton to come out, opt for the former. Transactions are completed, not happily, but successfully, until one asks for an ashtray. Reacting as if they have announced they intend to slay the firstborn of every woman in the land, the waitress recovers from her coronary spasm and informs them that smoking may be enjoyed, depending on your philosophy, in special zones. As the, now thirsty, passengers make their way to this special area, they are informed that the porcelain may not be taken out the coffeehouse jurisdiction and have to opt for the unfriendly foam cup. Finally, in the smoking zone there is no need to light up, as one single breath is the equivalent of a group of naughty urchins placing nicotine patches on your arms while you sleep. Welcome to Britain, no smoking until, well, you leave. That said, we are making the best of the experiences. Pints are in. No matter what time the flight is, us spunky Brits will say goodbye to our fair land with a pint in our hands. It is quite simple to put a little social diagram together of the background of the travellers and their destinations. Their attire and their drinks give it away. Our gate, for example, is for Alicante, and when we arrive, arrivals will be awash with every Premiership shirt, most not actually warm, the latest in shell suits and tight perms, all longing to return orange, pregnant and heartbroken. Perhaps I'm being cruel, too much snobbery, probably Graham's fault. It is difficult not to feel superior though when you are surrounded by the dregs. It is not difficult to see why we are held in such high regard when we land on foreign soil. Miraculously, our flight is called on time. We appear to be part of the chosen few who will have a relatively trouble-free journey. Though this manner will somehow be retracted at the other end, via the gift of lost luggage or mixed-up hotel reservations. Now comes one of the great comedy moments in airline travel. An average Airbus can transport around 180 passengers at an altitude of 9,000 feet, reaching a maximum speed of around 900 kilometers. I'm starting to feel European per hour. Being first on the plane does not signify that you will arrive in your destination before the other passengers on the plane. Yet, as soon as the call is made, the throng gets into a line. Samurai fights for position to sit on a plane that will not move until every passenger is accounted for. Being the Homeric character that he is, Zippy refuses to take this sign and swiftly orders 4 more beers for us to enjoy while we wait. As the plane is full and boarding will pass at a rate of about 6 passengers per minute, Zippy has shown himself an intelligent traveller and an avid adherent to my theorem. It is a moment to enjoy indeed. Watching the passenger hustle and jostle for a vantage point. Absolutely ludicrous. We sit back and count how many of the female passengers would, in an ideal world, receive the benefit of our charms. Obviously, given the presence of Zippy, this list becomes rather extensive. When there are around 10 to 15 people waiting in the queue, we decide it is time to ride the bird. After a smile from the people who take your tickets, of course they can smile, they are staying on the ground. The worst thing that could happen to them would be getting their tie stuck in the ticket machine. We board the plane. The first thing we see is that the extra 30 minutes that our other fellow passengers have had has not helped them to stow, my favorite travel word, their belongings in the overhead lockers. Indeed, many of them seem to think that their bags are much safer blocking the common passageways and contravening aviation regulations. Despite polite indications stop being enormous sheep shaggers, many still fail to comprehend the necessity to try and prevent the aircraft from crashing, and the moment in which we should have become airborne passes with the doors still open, lamenting stewardesses and a flight crew anxious to be chosen for more salubrious destinations. Finally, we can begin with the demonstration of what to do in an emergency. As most people are incapable of maintaining listening and comprehension levels enough to successfully negotiate the route from the living room to the gentlemen's toilets, let alone store the information on how to get from Leicester Square to Tottenham Court Road, this demonstration is at best pointless. Should we require the use of the items being meticulously ignored, our lives would more than likely be over within 3 minutes of them falling down conveniently from their overhead storage zone. I particularly like the whistle for attracting attention. I assume it is quite plausible for a fishing trawler to hear a whistle from 3 miles. From this moment on, though, there is no more comedy. Quite the opposite. From now on, fear is the principal emotion. Now, the door is closed and your fate has been sealed. You will not be able to leave the aircraft until the journey has been complete. Should this not go according to plan, then your life will be the asking price. Now I know that statistically there is no safer form of travel, but there is the possibility of me becoming president of Austria or marrying Jennifer Lopez. Therefore, I have no interest in these calculations. If you fall of a bike, you graze your knee. If this beast falls from 30,000 feet, then all you have to look forward to is a very dead future. So, we begin taxiing down the runway. Cue all the noises that no moving vehicle should ever make. The rattles begin and are complemented by sounds that can only suggest that the fuselage is now ready to snap in two. Then you have the sensation that the plane is not going fast enough for flight to be achieved. You are clearly going to overshoot the runway and become tree fodder. Yet somehow flight is achieved, and you relax. This should not occur, as you are now in the most dangerous part of your journey. Here so many factors can have death as your next dinner guest, so you study the faces of the cabin crew, looking for any telltale imminent death expressions on their faces until they remove their seat belts. Why do they always get double seat belts? And then you can prepare for boredom to overwhelm you during the rest of the trip. Should you be on a flight that will attempt to take you 2 or 3 steps away from starvation during the journey, you patiently await the arrival of your meal, constantly wondering that if you are sat in the middle of the plane, how come you always get yours last? The meal comes and is generally an insult to cuisine, peppered by brand names unknown outside the world of aviation. Where are the famous brands? You know where you are with them. Can there really be oddly named factories that produce jam and orange juice solely for the customers of airlines? I always like to order a vegetarian meal, not because of any predilection for sustenance bereft of flesh, rather simply to antagonize the cabin crew a little. I never informed them of this upon boarding the plane. This would spoil the fun. Instead, I let them know at check-in and expect them to pass on this information. It never gets passed on, and I am allowed a few moments of pretend grievance at the inefficiency of the airline. A wee bit sad, I know, but fun is often hidden on these journeys. This being a flight full of Brits, the bar is well stocked, perhaps even more so as our outward journey began in the thirsty land of Glasgow. The drink that comes with your meal is never enough, and soon retrieval of trays and the like has had to take second fiddle to the continuous servings of libations for the passengers who are loath to spend so much time in the confines of forced sobriety. This is when another danger of airline travel, though this can happen to you on dry land too, appears. I have never had a conversation with anyone I consider valid as a member of the human race on a plane. This is because I never initiate conversations, not wanting to give the impression of being an enormous twat. People who start conversations on planes should be ejected from the aircraft immediately. The cabin crew should have a special asshole control which allows offending travelers to enjoy the depressurized outside as they fall to their deaths. People should always maintain their dignity when they are alone. Starting a conversation simply suggests that they are lonely, or even worse, convinced of their own importance. To my left are a couple of orange tans, a color not produced by any contact with the sun known to science, a color that does not suggest health, rather proximity to a meltdown. Their dress could be worse. What seems to de rigueur for this season is for him, a Celtic or Rangers should you not speak Latin, top, ideally figure-hugging, mixed with either tracksuit bottoms or shorts, garish training shoes and white socks, branded, of course. She, on the other hand, will be wearing far too little when more would please the aesthetics. Vest tops and leggings make comfortable travelling wear, it would seem. Quail Domage. My centre and I are rather more golf than that. He has a lime pastel Lacoste sweater draped over his shoulders, and the tan accentuates a row of pearly whites. Flannel pants and deck shoes complete the look that proves looking like a cunt never was in style. She is just hideous. Channels and Dolce Gabbanas thrown together haphazardly like some young girl's dressing game with a wipeable board that she be immediately scratched for things to start again. They are going to tell me about their villa, their golf handicaps, their shares. In short, they are going to invite me to enter their fucking lives. Now I regret taking the seat on my own. I did so as I thought I would just have a drink, put my Discman on and snooze a bit. However, it would appear that the controls of this Airbus are unable to operate to their full extent should someone be listening to music via the power of alkaline batteries. Good job I'm not wearing glasses, as that would probably offset the radar. Fearing the initiation of conversation, despite the improbability of it being bilateral, I adopt a do not disturb position. From the safety of my faint slumber I can enjoy the Benejection attempting to try to weave his magic on one of the stewardesses. She is trying to maintain a professional stance whilst Benny comes out with all the lines that would get the rest of us a slap, but gets him a phone number. She also lets him know where they are staying as they are, as he puts it, overnighting it. I was unaware that airlines had their own verbs, transitive, regular. This was all done under the pretense that Benny merely wanted information about accommodation, though there was a subtext for all to see. Zippy was elated at the fact that they had done well, though Benny was quick to address the fact that the work had been his, and that the prize would be too. I managed to sleep for what feels like 18 seconds, though realize that we are actually hinting at a descent. Indeed, it is confirmed we shall shortly be landing at Alicante Airport. You always think that the hard work is done when you come into land. Reality tells a very different story. Landing is when you collect your thoughts, make your mental peace with all those you have wronged, tell those you loved how you wish you had loved them more, you count all your regrets, feel your ears and stomach fall in and out of place, and, once karma is achieved, you prepare yourself for death, hoping it will be as swift as possible, ready to enter the afterlife without any of the binds that your time on out godly earth. Awaiting impact, you feel a slight bump as the wheels hit the ground, and you give praises to those in the celestial tower for guiding you to safety via the gift of reverse psychology. 5 minutes later you wish you had actually crashed as the process that annoyed you so much before takeoff happens again, only this time in reverse. Welcome to your holidays.